Hello and welcome to our festive Clash of the Titans with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, Grinch Kevin O'Sullivan and two crackers, Russell Quirk and Peter Cardwell, standing in for JK and MG. Well, while Starmer's fizz has well and truly lost its sparkle, Trump has bounced back like a Christmas cracker. The BBC's baubles have smashed to bits. And despite Andrew and Meghan's best efforts, the royals have proved they're still the crown jewels of resilience. What a show we have for you. Roll the titles. What a year it has been, and so much to celebrate this Christmas, as long as you're not British. The return of Trump in America after surviving that assassination attempt and election victories for centre-right parties across Europe, a new world order is being established. Except here in Britain, of course, where we're stuck with Grinch Keir Starmer and his miserable comrades in incompetence and hypocrisy. The ghost of the 1970s Christmases past, well and truly here to haunt us. Inflation is up, unemployment is up, immigration up over 1 million a year. And he's only been Prime Minister for 5.5 months. The honeymoon lasted less time than Augustus Gloop's Advent calendar. In fact, Starmer is so unpopular, his only friends left are train drivers and Sadiq Khan. Sorry, Sir Sadiq Khan. Well, the Prime Minister has been off globe-trotting as our problems mount up at home, and Rachel Reeves has clobbered the farmers, working all hours to provide our turkey and sprouts on Christmas Day. He's just been in Norway, but told his kids he didn't have time to visit Santa Claus because he's been too busy turning Britain into crapland. The Tories are still hopelessly short of any wise men or indeed wise women. So it's Nigel Farage and Reform snaffling all the gold, and the frankincense and myrrh too, probably. It's been another annus horribilis for the royal family too. Prince Andrew and Harry and Meghan are the unwanted gifts that just keep on giving, aren't they? No doubt the King will reference his and Kate's cancer battles in his TV Christmas message. Maybe you'll be seeing it on the BBC, but, well, most of the BBC has been in the news for the wrong reasons. So many scandals this year. Hugh Edwards, Greg Wallace, the Strictly bullying row, that Charles might want to think about broadcasting it just on talkTV next year. We are, of course, ready to serve Your Majesty. Anyway, so that's a nice little roundup of what's been going on in 2024. Good knows what's going to happen in 2025. I'm joined by the boys. We've got our Christmas hats on. I have to say, I mean, I don't want to be a Grinch at Christmas, but goodness me, things have been pretty darn bad, have they not? And I have to say, most of it seems to me to come down to our new Prime Minister. It feels like he's been Prime Minister for about 5.5 years, but it's actually about 5.5 months. And it's going, I think we can safely say, pretty darn badly. Would that be the
I think that's the consensus.
That seems to be the consensus,
Yeah.
even from Labour voters.
And if you count the days that he's actually been in Great Britain, he's been Prime Minister for about 5 days.
Six.
Never hear Keir.
Never hear Keir, yeah. So it was free gear Keir, two-tier Keir, and never. I mean, it's
Never hear Keir.
The latest
Oh
polls,
dear, Keir.
the latest polls of the last week show that 61% of Britons are dissatisfied with him. His net approval rating is below any other Prime Minister in
He's
like,
officially
in my
the worst
lifetime.
Prime Minister of Britain ever.
Yeah,
Officially
I mean, I think if Liz Truss had got to 5.5 months in her dreams, she might have been just as unpopular. But given there was this supposed wave of excitement, it's quite astonishing, isn't it? And let's think, we've had winter fuel payments taken away. We had train drivers getting a big pay rise because, of course, decisions and choices being made. We had two-tier justice, of course, for the handling of the riots and attacks on our freedom of speech. We've had all the freebies, the free gear Keir, the budget, national insurance rises for employers, inheritance tax for farmers. As you say, he's always abroad. I mean, it's just non-stop, Peter.
It's the choices as well that you make. They say to govern is to choose. And the choice he has made, and Rachel Reeves, as Chancellor, has made, has really been about those who have done well out of this administration. And they've been the usual suspects. The ASLEF train drivers, the junior doctors. OK, they needed to sort that out. There's no doubt about that. But there are loads of people who will freeze this winter, who won't get their payments for whatever reason. There are lots of small businesses as well that are really thinking about national insurance rises as well.
Well, they're going to have to make job cuts or not hire someone.
But the crux of this is Starmer self-harmer, isn't it? That yes, he's had to make choices, but the two major problems that he's encountered were self-caused, because it was, of course, the winter fuel allowance, axing that. They didn't need to do it.
No, they
didn't
didn't.
save,
That came out
didn't
of the
save
blue,
much
didn't
money.
it?
And then, of course, the farmers' inheritance tax, again, won't save much money, didn't need to do it. And the reason that Labour did both of these things was class warfare. They don't like old people because they voted Brexit and they don't tend to vote Labour, and they don't like people in rural communities because they're traditional Tory supporters. It's as simple as that. So for ideological reasons, unnecessary reasons, this government has ruined itself.
But it's also, Kevin, you're right. I don't disagree with anything you've said. It's also things they've got themselves into, as well as things they've voluntarily done. The winter fuel allowance could have been part of the budget, for example. They could have taken some of the heat around that. But they did about a month beforehand.
I mean, I can understand. If you're ahead of a budget, we used to, when I was a political journalist way back in the day, anything that was leaked from the budget, that would be a sacking offence, a resigning offence.
There's a month before.
Now you know about things months and months before, and they leak it themselves. But you're only supposed to put out the stuff that's good news, aren't you? So that you get a load of separate headlines for that. But
yeah, but
why do you think they did that?
there's that. So you've got on the one side the Marxism, which I guess we shouldn't be surprised
Do you
about,
think
should
they
we?
are? Do you
Yes,
think they really
100%.
are?
This follows a particular MO, which is identify who we think is the pantomime villain rich, which is older people, business owners, wealth creators, entrepreneurs, and of course, who would have thought pensioners, farmers as well, and literally take that money and give it to your mates.
Because train drivers are famously hard up on the basic 65k for a 4-day week.
Of course, it was all fun how they survived it. But and so Keir Starmer talks about ordinary working people. Let's translate that as what it really means, which is the public sector. That's what it is.
Their Marxist project is this. They are taxing the hell out of the private sector in order to take that money and give it to the public sector.
Because the public sector works so well.
That's Marxism. They don't understand how it feeds in. But then you've got the Marxism on one side. But then, of course, let's not forget the utter deception. The way that this government took power under false pretences, an electoral fraud, I think it is, in terms of the way that they deceived the electorate. They didn't tell us anything that they've actually done, and they haven't done anything that they said they were going to do. It's deception.
It's such a major game changer what happened in that electoral campaign, because never again now will the electorate trust what the parties are saying in their manifestos.
Did they in the first place?
Well, much more than they do now.
Everything they kept telling us over and over again, everything is fully costed, except lots and lots of
Lots of people pointing out in the IFS and others that it wasn't fully costed. But the thing that I find absolutely extraordinary about the whole thing is that they knew they were going to be in power. They knew for at least a year, probably 2 years, and they still just kept making promise of promise. And then they started backtracking. Oh, no, we're not offering much. But even Labour voters, I know, people who've genuinely gone, Keir Starmer is the saviour of the world. The world's going to be so... The Tories were so awful.
The adults are in charge.
Yeah, but the grown-ups, competence back in the room. And even they have been stunned. And it's not just the policies, it's the actual handling of it, it's the PR. One thing you thought that Labour were good at, which the Tories have been rubbish at, which is actually a bit of communication. They've been absolutely useless at that as well. They absolutely look like they're rabbits in the headlights the entire time.
But is it just communication? I mean, my point is the Titanic didn't have a comms problem. The Titanic had an iceberg problem.
Well, it did actually.
I think it's more like Tony Blair
wasn't working very well.
Tony Blair could have sold it better. Well, I wonder who has been selling things better, and that is comeback of the year, undoubtedly, which is Donald Trump. I mean, who would have predicted that to have happened? Russell, you want to talk about this because while it's been miserable for us here in the UK, there's been a lot of cheer stateside.
Well, I think there'll be a lot of excitement and optimism across the United States. He is the 45th and now the 47th President of the United States. Some people seem to be rather uncomfortable with that. And actually, in all of this kind of Trumpism, and he's, really runaway victory, his landslide victory, which, of course, none of the pollsters really predicted. I mean, some of them were totally and utterly embarrassed by them saying, actually, I think Harris is going to win or it's going to be close. But the wonderful thing in all of this is the fact that the left are apoplectic about the fact that Trump has won. To the point that you can't go onto an American airline with a Trump cap on without a stewardess apparently coming over and saying, that's a bit offensive, could you take it off, please? It's hilarious. It's wonderful.
I feel that way about baseball caps generally.
Except Trump's triumph has sort of lifted the veil. And even in New York, which is supposed to be a Trump-hating city, people are walking around with MAGA hats now. So all of those people in America who didn't used to admit they were Trump supporters now do admit it.
Yeah.
And I think what's happened here is a sea change in world politics. You know, if I hear those Reform UK guys go one more time, oh, Sunday Times just made up that story about Elon Musk giving us money.
Really?
Of course he's going to give them money. Now, Reform UK, spurred on by Elon Musk, will carry Trump's mantle to Britain and maybe, just maybe, assume power, and then we can drop all this net zero crap and all the nonsense.
That would be a good thing.
You know,
Well, the interesting point about Trump as well is that there is just a huge lack of understanding why people voted for him. And it reminds me a little bit of the Brexit debate. It's not just I disagree with you, it's that you're wrong and you're morally wrong for voting for him. The big issues around Trump, policy issues around inflation, price of groceries, for example, in places like Pennsylvania, also the fact that he was offering an alternative. People saying, well, why would you vote for him? It's so different from what Washington's there. Well, the clue's in the question.
But it was the economy stupid, wasn't it?
I was going to say similar
also-
to here, but two things, immigration and the economy. Exactly the same things that we're now fighting out over
And we're
here,
seeing
and we're
across
going to
Europe
continue
as well.
to.
And
And also the fact you can say, well, they had 4 years. This isn't a blip. This isn't, and the left needs to get this into their heads. This is not a blip. This is not a one-term thing. He's got a second term, and there will be another figure like him or not like him that brings on a lot of these policies further on down the line.
But crucially also, there'll be lots of people who would support Trump. I said, repeatedly on my show, look, I've not been a fan of Donald Trump. I think there's lots of reasons why he's unfit for public office, but my God, Kamala Harris was worse. And I think there's a lot of stuff he wants to do on net zero, on immigration, on the economy that I really, really support. You don't have to necessarily think someone is a morally good soul to say he's better than the alternative.
The contrast...
And the so-called moderate alternative is not. Kamala Harris is an extremist, radical and utterly incompetent, idiot. Well, those are the choices.
And Donald Trump is a sort of cartoonish figure, or almost a sort of Victorian grotesque or something. But scrape away the orange face and the weird hair and the Americana aspect of his personality, and what he talks is common sense. I'm not going to charge you great big high energy bills because I'm going to get rid of net zero. I'm going to keep your fuel prices low. I'm going to keep your food prices low, and I'm going to seal our borders and get rid of all the illegals. People like that.
Contrast our economy in 2 or 3 years' time versus the American economy.
God.
A bit like we've seen in Argentina under Milei, who's already seeing 8% per annum GDP growth against our reduction.
Although it's
because
easy
of
when
his
you're coming
policies.
from a very low
But that's a big GDP number. And I suspect we'll see exactly the same in the US over the next 2 or 3 years because he's assembled a cabinet of individuals that understand the economy. And
Elon Musk is my big hope.
But what have
there.
we done? We've assembled a cabinet of people that have never even had a job, let alone know anything about business.
So out of their depths, this bunch. So even the ones who experience.
And Trump now gets it. He didn't perhaps get it in 2016. He gets it now. Look at how much has happened during the transition already. It's about a month to go. So many things are in place. There's radical change coming down the track. America is going to change, and he gets it. He understands you've got to, as soon as your feet touch the ground, you've got to start running.
By the way, have you seen what's in Canada, the dreaded Justin Trudeau, who stood up to the Canadian people and said, I'm going to give Trump the battle of his life. I'm going to fight him. And his deputy said, you do that and I resign. And it looks like Trudeau is going to have to quit and will probably lose the next election. So Canada will swing right. Look at Olaf Scholz in Germany. They're swinging. Everyone's swinging.
We are the only country that's not been doing that. But again, so much of that is, it wasn't a vote, come back to Kim, it wasn't a vote for Keir Starmer, it was a vote against the Tories for not being right-wing enough.
Because the Conservatives weren't Conservatives. Now, also, bring it home now in terms of the whole Trumpism thing to here. Just this week, we've seen Nick Candy, who's the new Treasurer of Reform, and Nigel Farage go to Mar-a-Lago to meet, guess who? Elon Musk. To be a fly on the wall in that room this week, what do we think that translates to over the next 2 or 3 years?
Tim Montgomery, he's now defected to Reform. He thinks 20 million is coming Reform.
These are huge sums of money. Will that be a game changer? We know that Nigel Farage made it really clear. He didn't want it to be all about Reform just affecting the Tory policy on promising a Brexit referendum or getting Boris Johnson elected, get Brexit done, and not Jeremy Corbyn in 2019. He said, I've been done with that. The Tories are they're Labour light. You need us. He doesn't want to be a protest vote. He wants to be the government. But do you think that Elon Musk's money will make that difference?
Well, I think it'll make a difference. It'll make a difference if Kemi Badenoch doesn't raise her game and fast. I mean, the Tories have disappeared as a voice of opposition.
Well, she still needs to. Look at the MPs
five Reform MPs are making the racket of their lives, really disrupting.
They're the opposition.
What is Bader not doing?
Reform are going to perform a political revolution.
I think so.
Well, it's going to be very interesting. Well, we'll talk about this no doubt many more times over next year. Coming up next on Clash of the Titans, the BBC's baubles smashed to bits while the Royals proved their resilience. Well, some of them did. Stay right here. Welcome back to Clash of the Titans with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and the boys. Well, one of the boys here, Peter Cardwell. You want to talk about events this year involving the BBC.
Our national broadcaster, the licence fee has gone up, yet scandal after scandal after scandal. Hugh Edwards, a lot of people focus, of course, on the court case and the fact that he got a suspended sentence because of his looking at paedophilic images. But what they neglect in all of that is how he treated younger staff. There will be there is an inquiry into all of that, but we still don't know about it. Still waiting for Russell Brand.
A lot of his behaviour was well known at the BBC.
Well, of course. We're still waiting for the Russell Brand report a year on. Greg Wallace, the most recent one, horrendous and very, very serious allegations there in regard to what he allegedly was up to on MasterChef. He's been sort of basically cancelled around this. Strictly Come Dancing not getting off either. Why can't the BBC get their house... Tim Westwood. Why can't the BBC get their house in order? Why can't they manage these situations? Why can't they manage these big...
Is it a problem specifically at the BBC, or is it a problem with people working in telly?
I can
That's part of it.
Yeah, well, the first rule of showbiz journalism is the BBC is useless. It is. It's a massive, great behemoth, massively overstaffed, run by old men in grey suits who have no idea what they're doing. Every Director General is a disaster. Tim Davie, I think, deserves special mention because he's a particular disaster. They just stumble from one scandal to the next and nearly
why?
Well, because first of all, I'll tell you why. Because when it's a big organisation, you're bound to get the odd Greg Wallace and the odd Tim Westwood and all that, and you have to deal with that. Or Jimmy Savile.
But they don't.
And what do they do? What do they do? Their first impulse.
Can I say, by the way, some of those illegal allegations that no actual,
Their first instinct at the BBC to this day is cover up, keep it secret, don't tell the people who pay for us, as in the public. So it's this urge to secrecy.
It's not just a telly thing. There's a special ingredient within the BBC, which is that they take money as a tax, which we all have to pay, regardless actually of whether you actually watch the BBC or not. And therefore, because it's mandatory, there is no scrutiny and there is no accountability. You cannot have an organisation that is not accountable to anybody, because guess what happens when there's no accountability, no scrutiny? Bad behaviour, shock.
But I think so much of this is about that celebrity culture. There's talk about, there's people who work on shows and then there's the talent. And some people, because they're considered to be so bigger than their shows, that they're able to get away with, sexual harassment or much more serious allegations. And there's a range of allegations. They are massively wide-ranging from, inappropriate comments to allegations of rape. And again, people who have been denying these claims. We must make that clear. And I don't want people sort of cancelled because someone said they didn't like the way someone spoke to someone 10 or 20 years ago. But some of these allegations are so straight. You'd think they'd have learned the lessons from the very serious allegations made about Jimmy Savile, very serious allegations made about a number of Radio 1 DJs. But they didn't learn the lessons.
They don't need to because no one does anything about it.
And no one gets sacked and there's no accountability. And it is down to management because, look, if you say something or do something as a presenter in an office, and the manager comes up to you and says, that's not okay, don't do that, well, then your card is marked. The problem is that these people are allowed to get away with it. You have very senior people in the BBC saying, I must have Greg Wallace for that programme. I must have...
Is he the great crowd puller?
No, he's not.
And there's no...
He was their pet working class person. They always have one. But listen, I'll tell you a story about the BBC because I knew, I still do know one of Hugh Edwards' victims, if you like, a very attractive young gay guy who started receiving intimate pictures of Hugh Edwards' private parts and invitations to hotels, and it became so oppressive that my friend went to HR at the BBC.
He worked at the BBC?
Yeah, he was a producer, and he went to the BBC and said, look, this has got to stop, I can't carry on like this. But do you know what HR said to him? well, it's Hugh Edwards. Are you sure you want to carry on with this?
Isn't that what's
That's
so
it. They venerate anyone behind the microphone.
But this is the extraordinary thing. You'd think it'd be the opposite way around because he's so high profile. This is the man, who was talking, joining us as a nation as we watched the Queen's funeral. He was there for the King's, coronation. He's there for the general elections. This man is so high profile. You'd think you want to be extra careful that the person who is fronting these shows of international importance.
But if you're at the BBC and you're bulletproof,
would be required to.
But if you're bulletproof, it encourages you to behave.
The key point in all of this is that the only thing that any broadcasting organisation has, beyond the vast resources the BBC has, is trust.
Yeah.
And if there are loads of people you can set up in your kitchen, you can have a channel on YouTube, it can be far more successful than maybe many BBC programmes, for example, if you've got decent lighting and decent audio and whatever. But what the BBC has, or at least had, was trust. And if you don't trust them, and if you're paying them a huge amount of money, people are going to go elsewhere, and they're voting with their feet.
They really
It's programming they don't want, with presenters they don't like, and we look at tens of thousands of people not paying their licence fee, going off to other media.
Let's not forget the incredibly biased news department. I mean, that is now a joke. And
that's where they have lost trust.
They are anti-Israel to the point of being anti-Semitic. Yep. They are extremely left-wing.
They're lunatics on climate change. Hysterical.
The worst entity in journalism is a very biased journalist who thinks they are not biased.
And
that
the narrative
is the BBC News.
And then we get told off. We're employed to give our opinion.
But they then bring in a fact-checking service that turns out to be incredibly and completely biased.
And run by a woman who lied on her own CV, which used to be a sacking offence.
By the way, in one of its agricultural declarations a couple of weeks ago, mixed up, didn't understand that acres are different to hectares.
Yeah.
That's BBC verified.
That's probably also what happened.
They were supposed to be clever.
That's also what probably went wrong with the inheritance tax.
That's because they've never been out of Hampstead.
This is very true. Can you not do Hampstead Heath in hectares? I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. We touched on this. We talk about bad behaviour. Kevin, you want to talk about the royals, or at least some of them.
Some of them. Well, we could talk about most of them, actually. I mean, it's been an annus horribilis for so many members of the royal family, two of whom deserve our utmost sympathy. And we have to pay tribute. The reason the royals carry on being popular is because despite oafs like Harry and Andrew, you have the King and Kate, the Princess of Wales, both suffering cancer and both handling themselves with great dignity and grace. And the nation has rallied behind those two great members of the royal family. Here's to William as well for doing his bit. Here's to the entire royal family, frankly, who we ought to be proud of. They do a good job, apart from the two absolute loser oafs, Harry and Andrew. Harry must wake up every day saying, thank God I've got Uncle Andy, because then he takes the flack away from me.
I mean, Prince Harry's never done anything as wrong as Prince Andrew, ever. And he fought for us in a war, for God's sake. Give him some credit.
Harry and Meghan have really had an annus horribilis. Basically, their Netflix contract is on the point of being cancelled. His series about polo was an absolute disaster. It looks like they're not even going to show her already filmed cooking series. They're so.
What about her jam? When's her jam coming out? That's what
American
pots of it, something like that.
American Riviera Orchard was launched in March, is not yet open for business, and is unlikely ever to do so.
I was going to start my own Hartley's jam, and it was going to be British seaside. British seaside plots. Yes, I mean exactly.
By the way, we've just got the traditional Christmas card from Harry and Meghan, which starts off with This is their Christmas card. This is what it says at the top. From the office of
and it also
Harry,
doesn't, of course, because it's truly and properly woke, doesn't mention the word Christmas.
No, it's Happy Holidays, which should be a shooting offence.
But I tell you,
about the birth of Christ.
In fairness, in America, everyone says Happy Holidays. They really do. But we've got the traditional pictures of the back of the kids' heads. Yeah. Those kids are going to get recognised by the back of their heads. We've seen them so often. We never see their faces. Now, everything has gone wrong for them. Those two weird pretend royal tours to Nigeria and Colombia. What was that about? I'm
assuming because it's Harry and Meghan that it's money.
Well, the thing with Harry and Meghan is that what they are now realising really, really rapidly and really brutally is that with every day that passes, they get a little bit further and further and further away from the royal family, and their relevance decreases and decreases
And their
and
revenue
decreases.
decreases.
Yeah.
Well,
And their revenue decreases, and they're trying to stay relevant. But the only way they can stay relevant is talking about the thing they used to be a part of
Yeah.
in relation to that.
And the
Nobody
thing
cares
is-
about them themselves.
No,
They
at
care
some
about what
point,
they used to be.
at some point, we're going to have genuinely the most. There was so much excruciating stuff in that Netflix documentary. It was a great watch, to be fair, but they kind of sold their souls. In his book, he kind of sold his soul.
Yeah.
At some point, again, it's like that celebrity thing. Well, eventually, you're Kim Kardashian. You have to show your bum. You have to show
That's
your
what
other
the
bits.
guy-
They'll have to come back to that.
Well, the
because-
chief executive of Spotify said just that when they canned their $20 million deal. He said these two, when they're not pouring a bucket over the royal family, they've got nothing else
There's
to
not-
give.
there's
And
nothing
that's
of interest.
so going forward, it's going to be interesting to see what they do this year coming up, because God knows what it will be.
But why would-
Because I think
I
they're
want to
all-
talk about Andrew.
But let's talk
though.
about
Come on.
Andrew. I've got one question. We all know what's going on now. He was, let's call this guy, what's his name?
H6.
H6. He is a spy. Our courts have decided twice this guy is a spy. So I'm not interested in his denials. He is a Chinese spy. He was a close associate of Prince Andrew for 10 years, both personally and professionally. He was his business contact in Beijing. We got a problem here. Now, recently, Andrew was on the point of being kicked out of the Royal Lodge, his grandiose home in Windsor Great Park that he's lived in for 30 years, because he couldn't afford the maintenance. He needed £3 million. Everybody knows. Everybody knows he's skint. Suddenly, 3 weeks ago, I've got the money. Where did he get it? Did he get it from H6? We need to know. This is serious.
This is the problem, though,
This
as well,
is serious.
because when you become a semi-detached royal, any accountability, the palace looking at your accounts, all of that goes.
Yeah.
And the fact is, there's no way to get that back with Andrew or indeed with Harry as well.
And I say the lack of accountability. This is a man we know has got poor judgment. Some people, we've had some royal commentators talking about he's been naive. Well, I mean, I think the MI5 and MI6 were a bit sodding naive to allow this Chinese spy to get so close to Prince Andrew. But look, this is a man, Prince Andrew, who was so naive, he thought that he would go visit a convicted child sex trafficker, a paedophile, in Jeffrey Epstein, and go and stay at his house for 4 days. Security services allowed that to happen, to apparently break up his friendship from
It's
him.
not naivety.
Because he's a gentleman.
It's not naivety. When
Exactly.
it's done that,
He has
and then
terrible
he's done it
judgment.
again.
But look, Prince Andrew has never met a dodgy millionaire or billionaire that he didn't like.
Yeah, he's
Not
on
one.
the scrounge.
Not
He
one.
scrounges
But
money
the
from.
security services warned him directly about this character, about H6, and he ignored the warning.
But look on
But he shouldn't be allowed to ignore the
But look on the
warnings.
bright side.
He's not allowed to have the trappings of the royal family and still live in their grace and
But
favour
look on the
house
bright side.
and
This
not
is the
listen.
first time we've ever had a sentence with the words Prince Andrew and intelligence. In the same sentence.
Well, more to the point, he's actually
Slightly
thrilled.
different context,
He's
I think, there,
actually
Peter.
thrilled because he has been described as China's useful idiot, and as he's telling friends, it's the first time anyone said I'm being useful. So there you go. So it's all working out for him.
Prince Andrew being useful.
this is-
On that note, I mean, it's an unlikely note, and Prince Andrew and intelligence being in the same sentence, I think we'll need to end it. Thank you very much, chaps. Great to have you join us. I can't believe we wore the hats the whole way through.
Merry Christmas,
we can't.
everybody.
Indeed, Merry Christmas to everyone.
Christmas.
That is all from us of the Clash of the Titans this year. A huge big thank you to Kevin O'Sullivan, to Russell Quirk, and to Peter Cardwell. We will be back, of course, in 2025. Remember, you can catch more from us on Talk all week. Tune in on your radio, online, on your smart speaker. Don't forget to subscribe to Talk on YouTube.